within the next 24 hours, which is impossible for a population of 1.1 million people to do.
You said that they're fighting for liberation, they're fighting for freedom against the IDF. You keep talking about the IDF. I've yet to hear you say they should also be fighting for liberation and freedom against Hamas. I think it's very, very dangerous.
Bro, this motherfucker unironically just did the Onion article from a couple days ago. Dying Gazans criticized for not using their last words to condemn Hamas.
Military technology that Israel has that would allow them to conduct precision drone strikes. They don't have to use white phosphorus in areas where there are civilians.
But we don't know if they are, though, Jess. We haven't been able to prove if they are, though. You're just making a blanket statement as if it's fact.
Yes, they said categorically no. We do know that if they were using white phosphorus, which there are reports that they are, that would be a war crime, given that they're using it in areas
that have not been
civilians.
Validated, not by even the United States intelligence agency. So are you now believing Hamas? Because they're the ones who are saying that this occurred.
If they are using white phosphorus in Israel and civilians are burned by that white phosphorus, that is a war crime.
Yeah, but where are you getting this information that they're using it as if we know that to be true? It is alleged. We haven't validated this. They're just spreading propaganda, essentially.
Right now, on the fact that if they are using white phosphorus, that would be a war crime. You're saying it would not be a war crime, but if civilians are burned by the white phosphorus, then it is a war crime.
Also, can we pause in really quickly here?
In
Just because we're watching this in real time and we have the ability to use this evidence right here. Human Rights Watch says Israel used white phosphorus in Gaza. Human Rights Watch on Thursday accused Israel of using white phosphorus munitions in its military operations in Gaza and Lebanon, saying the use of such weapons put civilians at risk for serious long-term injury. The IDF obviously denies it, but I mean, guys, they've used white phosphorus before. They'll use it again anyway. We have a lot of evidence to support that right now.
I'm sure that Shermichael will come out and offer a correction when the, official evidence comes out that in fact white phosphorus was used.
Combat all the time. Ask anybody who's ever fought in a war. I know a ton of them. That is just a part of war. It's an ugly part of war, but it is a part of war. And so to pretend that somehow Israel is doing something that is unique is a bit absurd to me. Anytime a country is in conflict with another country or a radical extremist group, there is a likelihood that civilians will be killed. With that said, Hamas also killed civilians. A lot of Israelis have died. Americans have died. So I would hope, Jess, you would have this same angst and ire against Hamas that you appear to be having against Israel.
I am on the side of peace. And I think anyone who's on the side of peace.
What does that mean? That's a ridiculous blanket statement. You're on the side of peace. What does that mean? What does that mean? Between
us, Shermichael. What I'm saying is right now, we know there's clear reports, and this is the story we're covering now, is that 1.1 million people in Gaza have been asked to relocate. We know what will happen if they do not relocate. The IDF has made that very clear. It is impossible to have 1.1 million people relocate within 24 hours. That's why the United Nations is calling what is happening a war crime. To withhold food and electricity from a population of people is also a war crime. What is happening in Gaza right now is the military of Israel exerting their strength on a population of people who have no military. That is why it is a war crime. That is why today, when we cover this story, we need to ask the Biden administration if they seriously support Gaza war crimes being committed by Israel, who they say is our ally, and we stand with Israel no matter what. I think the American people are on the side of peace and war crimes not being committed against innocent civilians.
I think the American people are on the side of a country that has been attacked by a radical Islamic group that they didn't call for. And this extremist group is now finding itself in the midst of civilians to do the very type of propaganda that you're spreading to our audience right now, which is to say it's war crimes against civilians, just instead of saying, well, wait a minute here. Why is Hamas going to heavily populated, dense areas where they know innocent civilians are? Maybe it's because they want Israel to fight them there so that said civilians can be killed in the process. I mean, that's not an irrational assumption to make.
Can we pause it really quickly?
What we have going on in
Mac already got ahead of this one by saying that is exactly what the IDF does in Israel by embedding their military operations and making every single fucking citizen of Israel sign up for the IDF for like a year or whatever. Guys, that's exactly what Israel does. It's crazy. Yeah, that guy is a serious bootlicker. Also, there's some really funny pictures of him dressed up like a Power Ranger on his Twitter that I found. So if you guys want a fucking good laugh after this, I'll go ahead and put it up really quickly. This one was a doozy. This is how he likes to spend his free time. So this is the kind of guy we're dealing with over here, Power Ranger.
What the fuck? I decided to do some late night practice on my Ducati. I'm practicing stops. What the fuck? What a loser.
Ducatis are expensive ass motorcycles too. He must make a good living shilling for the man. But anyway, let's continue to listen to this drivel.
Yep. And by the way, this is what like mainstream media wants you to do. He is doing exactly what the Hill wants him to do, and he'll probably be rewarded as far as his career is concerned. This is some grade A Israel simping, some grade A bootlicking we're watching right now.
Yeah, shout out to Jessica for bearing through this.
Yeah.
Israel and Palestine right now. It's not a conflict of a few days that began at the beginning of a terrorist attack. We had Netanyahu explicitly decide to prop up Hamas in this war. That is why 4 in 5 Jewish Israeli citizens blame the Netanyahu administration for the attack of Hamas. What we have going on here is a much more complicated geopolitical conflict than simply a terrorist attack by Hamas on Israel. Israel is located in land that was traditionally Palestinian. And when we had the Nakba in 1947 and 48, we had Israel expand and establish themselves as a state with the help of the colonial British government that decided with a coalition of European states that we're going to recognize Israel as a state. Since then, they have been expanding their territory into Palestinian land, displacing Palestinian homes, bombing Palestinian neighborhoods. And so what we have now is the culmination of many years of an apartheid state, of an occupation, and peace not being present. And you have the United States military giving billions of dollars to Israel.
So do you want us to give the billions of dollars to Hamas?
They don't even have a military. They don't have a military. And you have the expansion of land and the displacement of people who are essentially throwing rocks back. And so we have to understand what is going on in the region in the historical context that it exists,
I think people
not
are
just
smart
in the
enough.
news cycle we're in right now.
Yes, I think people are smart enough to understand what's going on right now. And you mentioned the poll of Israelis, yet you
I like how she brings up all of that history, all of that context, which helps to explain what's going on. And he just completely barrels right over it. And, I think the people understand what's happening here. I think
when
people
they clearly don't.
Yeah, when they clearly don't. And fucking neither do you, Shermichael. Clearly not. Like, yeah, what she said is actually relevant. She wasn't just filibustering. No, that's actually all really relevant information to understand why a terrorist group would commit terrorist actions. And by the way, he was like, she mentioned all this money that's coming to the Israeli government from America. And he's like, she brings it up and he says, well, what should we be funding Hamas instead? Well, no, not necessarily. But what you don't understand, Shermichael, is that if we were providing aid and support to Palestine, then the Palestinian people would not have to rely on Hamas for security. As Jessica said, the Israeli government, the Israeli people have a military. They have defense. The Palestinian people do not have a military other than Hamas. They do not have any other apparatus for defense to rely on other than Hamas. So, yeah, unfortunately, that is going to lead a lot of Palestinian people to, quote unquote, support Hamas. Because what other fucking option do they have? To just
Israel
get slaughtered?
Turned off their fucking drinking water, bro. They turned off the electricity. They are 300,000 people already displaced from their homes before a ground invasion. Like, it's so obviously obtuse. It's so obviously disingenuous. It's so obviously performative, but it's still maddening and it's still nefarious. And this guy represents firmly mainstream media's talking points. This is exactly how they address that. Every piece of context goes completely out the window, and it's the exact same recipe. I mean, anytime the United States has a conflict, this is what it goes back to. Oh, so you support the terrorists? Anything in the last 25 years? Oh, so you're with the terrorists? You're with the terrorists? Oh, you don't want all these innocent people to be fucking just bulldozed over, have their lives destroyed, right? You don't see these as dehumanized beasts like the fucking government of Israel? No, I see them as fucking human beings with dreams and hopes and passions and children and loved ones, right? They bleed when they're cut. They cry when their children are killed. That's what Noam Chomsky said. Anyway.
Leaders in Israel have formed a unified government, which is something that many thought was almost impossible before this, meaning that political leaders in Israel who are not fans, who are not supporters of the Benjamin Netanyahu administration have decided to join him and form a unified government to fight back against Hamas, and likely they're backing and funding from Iran. And so I think the American people are aware of that.
Oh my God. Right
with
here.
that
This
said,
is
I
crazy.
certainly
Pause it
do
right
want
here.
peace for
Guys, that is an insane rhetoric. We cannot allow the right wing to start fucking spreading propaganda about Iran and get people to cheerlead war with Iran. John Bolton has been rightly ridiculed by almost everyone, regardless of your political party, for being just an absolute crazy person, a psychopath, a bloodthirsty goon that has always been cheerleading for fucking war with Iran. If I start seeing Michael Bolton, John Bolton up fucking around on Fox News giving his wisdom and his analysis again, I'm gonna lose my mind. If that happens, guys, Max said it 100 times worse than the war in Iraq. It will be devastation on scale that none of us can comprehend. And people are just throwing it around like it's a real fucking option, and also spreading misinformation. We have this dude's fucking bitch. We have fucking the Human Rights Watch saying that they're using white phosphorus on civilians, but this guy's got some hearsay from the IDF that fucking Iran is funding Hamas, and that's who did the attack. Like, do you see the lack of consistency here, guys? Facts and consistency only matter when it's the other side, right? And then nothing is ever good enough. Nothing is ever true enough. Nothing's ever, confirmed enough. It's like, oh, that's still just, it's the same exact shit that we see in every bad faith argument.
Absolutely. And you better believe that the neocons in Washington want war with Iran. They have wanted war with Iran at least since the Bush era. I remember during the Bush era, like my sister had a button she would wear that said "Hands off Iran." Like people have been worried about America finding an excuse to go to war with Iran for basically my entire life. This has been something like hanging over the head of America and, the entire Middle East for, my entire life, like I said. So this is definitely something we should be worried about. It's not just some far flung, maybe they'll go to war with Iran. Like, no, they've been looking for an excuse to my entire life. And this absolutely might be their excuse.
It would be the end of this. Would be the real World War III, guys. This would be the real World War III.
Right.
The Palestinians. But the Palestinian people, in my opinion, need to stand up against Hamas. It's not the United States' duty to do that. It's not Israel's duty to do that. If you're a Palestinian and you have Hamas in your region using you as an essential tool, if you will, to...
It's hilarious, too, because he's literally echoing the logic of Hamas here. The logic of Hamas is that, if you're an Israeli citizen, settler who's living on our fucking land and participating in the brutality that our people face as a result of your government, then, if you get caught up in the crossfire, that's your own fucking fault. That's Hamas's logic, clearly. I mean, that's why over 1,000 Israeli citizens are dead, basically blaming Israeli civilians for the actions of their government. And now here's Shermichael doing the same thing just to Palestinian people, saying that, it's kind of your fault, isn't it? You guys support Hamas. You guys elected Hamas. You're kind of responsible for their crimes. You kind of deserve to die as a result of their crimes, which is, again, insane because that's the exact logic of Hamas that is constantly criticized by people like this.
And on top of that, it's the exact same logic that would lead to all of our death, right? Like the United States military apparatus has committed so many crimes and they are just embedded through the fucking regular society. It's like, oh, sorry, guys, had to just blow up New York City or just had to blow up San Diego because, they had a lot of military out. They just intentionally put it there, guys. They had to blow up Chicago. Great Lakes wasn't too far away. We couldn't tell if there were any of those guys that were hanging out in Chicago. They just infiltrated. They were at the bars. They were in apartments. They were in the shoe store. We just had to wipe them all out. Like, that's the exact logic that would be able to be used against us because we've done dozens of crimes against humanity in my lifetime.
To attack Israel? At what point will the Palestinian people stand up and say, enough is enough? You will not use us anymore as a cudgel in your battle against Israel because we just want peace. Why haven't they done that? Because I certainly think they should.
The Palestinian people would like to have freedom from the occupation of the apartheid state of Israel.
What about Hamas? What about Hamas? No, I mentioned Hamas, Jess. What about Hamas? You keep blaming this on Israel. What about Hamas?
If you want to have a conversation, Shermichael, I think we should, which means that when I speak, you can't speak over me.
Well, I think you're being irrational, though, Jess.
Is the leaders of Israel. They are unified in support of this war and the occupation of Palestine, but the Israeli people are not. Similarly, there are many people in Palestine who don't support the actions of Hamas. There are many people who have no idea what to do to get liberation from Israel because they're fighting an army that they don't have an army to fight back with. And that army is backed with billions of dollars of weapons from the United States government. So when you have a small terrorist group, Hamas, fighting back, committing atrocities, and that gets reported on, but we don't have decades of an occupation be reported on in the West, that's when we have this kind of lopsided coverage and conflict, when we have the United Nations very clearly calling out where the war crimes are committed. We cannot say that just because Israel is our ally, we will ignore all of the war crimes that they have committed. There are Palestinian people fighting for liberation and fighting for freedom against a military that they don't have the strength to be fighting. It's a lopsided situation, and we need to call it as such if we really do care about civilians dying, because many more civilians will die because they won't be able to fight the IDF off if they don't allow them to safely exit Gaza within the next 24 hours, which is impossible for a population of 1.1 million people to do.
You say that they're fighting for liberation, they're fighting for freedom against the IDF. You keep talking about the IDF. I've yet to hear you say they should also be fighting for liberation and freedom against Hamas. I think it's very, very dangerous.
Bro, this motherfucker unironically just fucking did the Onion article from a couple days ago. Dying Gazans criticized for not using their last words to condemn Hamas.